Hey guys, this is Jesse from the Janjo Zone, and in this video we will be discussing 3 Yu-Gi-Oh cards from the OCG that had kind of different effects than what we have seen in the initial TCG printing for these cards. And let me just say that they're kind of wacky, so you definitely stay till the end and enjoy the ride.
Wait, don't forget to subscribe if you haven't, because that helps me upload more videos and know that you like content like this.
So the first card we are talking about today is Trap Hole, or also known as in the OCG with its actual translated name is Pitfall. So Pitfall is pretty interesting. This is definitely the lightest of the cards we're tackling today. The card initially came out in Volume 1, the very first set in Yu-Gi-Oh, which I've talked about in a couple of videos at this point. And its effect reads that when your opponent summons a monster with an attack power of 1,000 or more to their field, destroy the Pitfall and that specific monster. So it's pretty funny when you think about it, because when you look at the Trap Hole text, is that the attack monster summoned by your opponent is 1,000 points or more, then that monster is destroyed. So the main difference between Trap Hole and Pitfall is that Pitfall, it specifically lists that it destroys the card too. Because remember, when Volume 1 came out in Yu-Gi-Oh, this was before other kinds of trap cards. The only back row cards you had spells, you had equip spells, and you had trap cards. It would be quite a while before you would see other kinds of trap cards, continuous and counter traps. The rules were still in their infancy stages, which meant that if you didn't have this effect text on it, where it destroyed the card itself, you could just imply, well, it stays on the field. It's a continuous trap hole, which is kind of nutty. I'm honestly surprised that Konami hasn't printed a card in the modern climate of Yu-Gi-Oh that's kind of like that. That would be a very busted card. I mean, I'm sure it would be a little bit different than just a continuous trap hole. It'd probably be a little bit of an errata to it. But I think the fact remains that that's kind of interesting. A lot of cards were sort of similar like that. A lot of confusion back in Series 1 Yu-Gi-Oh days, like with Thunderbolt or Raigeki, would list that it destroys all your opponent's monsters. Now, it didn't necessarily state on their side of the field, so would it destroy monsters in their deck? Would it be like a crush card virus kind of thing? Maybe, but that's just kind of the weird text that they had, and I'm sure a lot of players of Retro Yu-Gi-Oh kind of understands this when you look at many older phrasing of text that many modern reprints or modern just prints in general will have that problem solving text. They won't have put this card or place this card, they'll shorten graveyard, or they have piercing battle damage now. There's so many different things that kind of shorten things and makes everything just a bit more simpler, disregarding text length for convoluted effects. But in terms of simple effects, it's like now we know that when you activate Trap Hole, it's after it resolves, it's going to be sent to the graveyard, the GUI. But back when the card first came out, it had a list specifically that it was destroyed, which is kind of funny just to think about that. Like, well, yeah, of course it's destroyed, but back then you didn't know, so the card had to explain it itself because the rules were still kind of being molded. So yeah, Trap Hole, that's the first one we got. So the next card we have is Sandgan, or by its OCG name, Critter. Now, Sandgan's initial effect is that when this card is sent from the field to the graveyard, you can add a monster with an attack of 1,500 or less from your deck to your hand, and then the deck was shuffled. Well, go figure. And when you compare the initial release from Metal Raiders to, let's say, the Turbo Pack, it's definitely shorter. It doesn't say that you need to shuffle your deck. It doesn't say move a card. So that's already in effect. But the original one, which was from the OCG, which was released in Volume 6, translates to When this card is placed in the graveyard, add one monster with an attack strength of 1500 or less from your deck to your hand and shuffle your deck. So this may sound familiar, right? It may sound like, well, that's Sandgan. But there's a key difference that you may have picked up on. The key difference is that it does not specify the field. It specifies when it is just placed in the graveyard. Now, what does this mean? This means that any way you get this card to the graveyard, it will get its effect off. Meaning cards like Graceful Charity, you draw 3, you dump a Sandgan, boom, you get Sandgan's effect off. Use a card like, I don't know, just Premature Burial, or perhaps a Painful Choice, or other discarding cards like Raigeki Break, Magic Jammer. Any of these kinds of cards would get the effect off, because it does not specify field, it does not specify hand or deck. It's just when this card is placed, boom, in the GY, it will get its effect off. And this was the same thing with Witch of the Black Forest. I'm just using a critter as the example here. And that was really crazy. In the later years of Series 1 OCG Yu-Gi-Oh, you're definitely playing as many of these guys as you can, because they are the ultimate discard card. They're better than Thunder Dragon because you can add whatever you wanted if you wanted to. You can use it as any sort of discard card. It's better than Thunder Dragon. It's better than Sinister Serpent. It searches things out, man, and kind of started making Exodia decks kind of scary. I'm sure I'll do an OCG Exodia deck at some point. If you'd like to see that, let me know. But yeah, I think that's kind of crazy to think about, that Sandgan had that effect to begin with, that they weren't really thinking that it was on the field, because how many cards actually would take advantage of it at the time? The only one I could think of would be like a Magic Jammer or a Graceful Charity. There wasn't too many discard cards in Series 1 Yu-Gi-Oh! Now clearly, as the game progressed, they figured out, they must have realized that this is a bit broken. You can get its effect off too easily, which gives you too much advantage, and having it on the field just kind of fixes a lot of the problems. Now, Sandgan would go on to get even more erratas. If you look at the modern text of it, is that you can't use the card that you added for the rest of that turn, and you can only use Sandgan once per turn, which definitely neutered the card. You still see, once again, I think the only deck I've ever seen it in modern Yu-Gi-Oh is like Altergeist, but that's about it. Like other kind of like Fiend decks, or I mean, you could search it out, but it's certainly nowhere near the impact and the power of the original critter, the OCG Sandgan. And that's kind of funny to think about, just what it went from to how it's now. There's been a lot of changes with it, and just going from OCG to TCG was already a big change that many players don't know about. And that's why Janjo is here, to teach you information about retro Yu-Gi-Oh! You might not know about. So get the Sandgan, you could get the critter. Alright, so the last card we're talking about is even more of a wild change. I wanted to scale this up from, subtle change to, this is kind of an important change to something that's just crazy. And obviously it's not crazy in the sense of the term, but it's crazy in the sense that it's wild. And that's Toon World. See, Toon World, its effect is always been very simple, kind of stupidly simple, bad simple, where you activate it by paying 1,000 life points, and that's it. You need it on the field to summon your tunes. That's its only effect. It had no sort of protection. It was nowhere near the power of a Toon Kingdom that would just completely replace the card. When it comes to the original Japanese release, however, in Pharaoh's Servant, this was the only printing of this text before it's what we know it is today. See, its original effect read that you pay 1,000 life points when played. And then, in addition, if you do not pay 500 life points during each of your standby phases, this card will be destroyed. When this card is sent from the field to the graveyard, add the life points you have paid to your life points. So basically what this means is that if you don't, for whatever reason, if you don't wind up paying that 500 life points, I'm not sure what would prevent you from doing that. it would be destroyed, which meant that you have to pay this each during a standby phase, which made it even worse. But when it is sent from the field to graveyard, you do get all of your life points back. If you have this for at least 2 turns, you're getting back that 1,500 life points, which is really cool. Honestly, I wish modern day Toon World just had that, where it was that you pay 1,000 life points, when it's destroyed, you gain 1,000 life points. That would at least mitigate the drawback and make the card a little bit more playable. Maybe it's just me, in terms of retro Yu-Gi-Oh anyway. But that's really kind of nutty that they added all these crazy things to it, and even still, it doesn't add anything to the card. It doesn't make any difference why you're paying these extra life points, because it doesn't add any extra sort of protection or searching or nothing. It doesn't do anything else for tunes. You just happen to pay more life points to keep this card on the field, but at the same time you get those life points back. Now I guess it's inherently better, because even if you have this on turn 1, you would still get your life points back if it's destroyed. But most likely you're going to keep this for many turns, and if you're already paying life points to attack with toon monsters, you're paying a ton of life points. If you have this for 2 turns, because you include the summoning sickness for, I don't know, a toon mermaid, then you pay another 500 life points to attack, all of a sudden you're out 2,000 life points, which is 500 more than what it would just be with Toon World and a mermaid attacking. So that's kind of crappy. It doesn't even give you an option, I suppose. Maybe they had the intention that you could decide, like, you can pay 500, but it just says if you do not pay 500. So I'm not quite sure where the ruling goes for that for Toon World. I would like to think that it gives you the option. It could be like a really like muddy water sort of deal, like Imperial Order was, but I don't think I like it. Just, again, you're paying so many life points, and what are the odds that it is going to get destroyed? It may get destroyed, it may not get destroyed. And if it doesn't, you're still paying 500 life points with no added benefits. It's definitely crappier in many ways. Like, I'd rather just pay 1,000 life points and then just ignore it. But when it comes down to it, Toon World, it definitely, they try to make it crazy as they could, I guess, in the sense that, like, they want to add more text to it, make it a bit more fancy, I guess is the word for it, opposed to just paying 1,000 life points and that's it. But they realize that, yeah, the extra stuff, it's not needed, it doesn't add anything, it just takes away from the card, and there's absolutely no need for it. So I understand why they did this errata, and it's just funny that it was changed in the Structure Deck Pegasus, which was the following release. And when we first got it in the OCG, well, we got the Magic Ruler release, which was just the one that we know and love today, and it's never been the same in the TCG, so many players don't know about this original effect for Toon World, because why would it have a different effect? Why would it have an errata? It's never had an errata apart from just fixing up the text here and there, fixing up some of the lingo. So that's absolutely crazy. So definitely let me know if you knew about any of these, and if there's any other kind of funny OCG errata stuff that you know about. Definitely let me know in the comments below, or on my Discord in the Spice Rack, which is also linked in my description, among other social media and supportive links for the channel. So hope you all have a wonderful day, and I'll see you all next time.
My grandpa's deck has no pathetic cards, Kaiba.